The sound arrived first, a terrifying, continuous ripping noise, unlike any other machine gun. Allied soldiers called it Hitler's buzzsaw, the bone saw, the zipper. This was the Maschinengewehr 42 or MG42. At the heart of this storm of steel was a single soldier, the MG42 gunner. Not a propaganda hero, but a young man, often barely out of his teens, wielding one of the most feared weapons of World War II. He was the enemy's #1 target, a magnet for bullets and shells with a brutally short life expectancy. The MG42 gunner's story is a lesson in the duality of warfare, technological advantage versus human cost. It's about endurance, survival, and the terrible cost of wielding immense power on the battlefield. The MG42 gunner was the embodiment of both the might and the tragedy of modern warfare. Born from necessity on the Eastern Front, the MG42 replaced the MG34, which was too complex for mass production and harsh conditions. Its stamped steel design made it fast, cheap, and reliable, firing up to 1,500 rounds per minute. The MG42's roar shattered enemy morale and became the backbone of German squads. But its firepower brought immense heat, risking melted barrels. Teams relied on discipline, teamwork, and constant resupply to keep it firing. The MG42's legend was forged in steel, fire, and the sacrifice of its crews. The MG42 devoured ammunition at a staggering rate. A standard squad carried thousands of rounds, but the weight was crushing. Gun, spare barrels, ammo belts, and personal gear turned the team into pack animals. This burden slowed them down, making movement exhausting and dangerous, especially in mud or rubble. The gunner was always anxious about running out of ammo. Every bullet had to count, especially as German logistics faltered later in the war. Resupply was a constant, risky operation. Ammunition carriers moving back and forth drew enemy attention. The very supply lines that kept the gun firing also betrayed its position to enemy spotters and artillery. The MG42 team was trapped in a paradox. To be effective, they needed constant resupply, but that flow painted a target on their backs. A silent MG42 was useless, but a firing one was a beacon for enemy fire. The gunner's effectiveness depended on a fragile chain of supply and teamwork. Every burst of fire was a calculated risk. The logistics of war were as deadly as the bullets themselves. The MG42's appetite for ammunition was both its strength and its Achilles heel. The gunner's greatest enemy was often not the soldier in front of him, but the empty belt at his side. In the end, survival depended as much on supply as on skill. The MG42's greatest strength, its rate of fire, was also its greatest weakness. After just 250 rounds, the barrel glowed red-hot and had to be changed. The quick change system was ingenious, but in combat, it was a moment of extreme vulnerability. For those few seconds, the squad's most powerful weapon was silent, and the enemy knew it. Under fire, the gunner and assistant had to swap barrels with precision, using an asbestos glove, while bullets and shrapnel rained down. Dropping a barrel or fumbling the latch could be fatal. Every second of silence invited enemy advance or artillery. Many gun teams were lost during these tense moments. The barrel change was a race against death, a stark reminder that even the best weapon had a fatal flaw. The MG42's power came with a price, a few seconds of helplessness that could decide the fate of a squad. The gunner's nerves and skill were tested most in these moments. Survival depended on speed, teamwork, and luck. The peril of the barrel change was the gunner's ever-present nightmare. The MG42's roar was a death sentence for its targets and a beacon for every enemy weapon. The moment the gunner fired, he became the battlefield's top target. Allied doctrine demanded the machine gun be silenced first. The gunner was hunted relentlessly. Survival depended on constant movement. Fire, then relocate before the enemy could zero in. Shoot and scoot became the rule, but exhaustion and chaos made it perilous. Mortars, snipers, and flanking infantry all converged on the MG42's position. Casualty rates for gunners were appallingly high. Experience was quickly lost and replaced by raw recruits. Inexperience led to fatal mistakes, firing too long, staying put, fumbling barrel changes. The result was a vicious cycle of attrition. The MG42 gunner was both the hunter and the hunted, locked in a deadly duel with enemies seen and unseen. His power made him indispensable and doomed. The MG42 was formidable, but not invincible. Mud and ice on the Eastern Front clogged mechanisms and froze lubricants, demanding constant, meticulous maintenance. The gunner and assistant had to be skilled mechanics, fixing jams and replacing parts under fire. In Normandy, the Bocage's hedgerows offered new challenges and opportunities, perfect for ambush but requiring new tactics. Gunners became masters of concealment, holding fire until the perfect moment, then relocating through the dense terrain. The shoot-and-scoot method became even more critical in close, brutal combat. The MG42 team's survival depended on adapting to every environment, mud, snow, or hedgerow. Technical skill, terrain knowledge, and teamwork were as vital as marksmanship. The gunner was no longer just a static anchor, but a mobile, elusive threat. Every battle demanded new tactics and relentless adaptation. The MG42's lethality was matched only by the ingenuity of its crew. Survival was a matter of skill, not just firepower. The gunner's greatest weapon was his ability to adapt. The MG42's roar struck fear into the enemy, but it also battered the gunner. Firing the weapon was a violent, all-consuming experience, deafening noise, bone-shaking vibration, the stench of cordite. Many gunners suffered lasting hearing loss and constant ringing in their ears. The psychological toll was immense. Every enemy gun was aimed at them, every moment a fight for survival. One survivor recalled, "Every time I pulled the trigger, I knew every American was aiming at me." The stress was relentless during battle and in the anxious quiet between attacks. The gunner carried the weight of his comrades' lives. A jam or empty belt could mean disaster. As the war dragged on, supplies dwindled, replacements were raw, and hope faded. The pride of wielding such power gave way to grim determination and exhaustion. The MG42 gunner was trapped in a deadly loop, his weapon ensuring he'd always be at the heart of the fiercest fighting. The psychological scars lasted long after the war ended. The true cost of the MG42 was paid in the minds and bodies of its gunners. Their endurance was as remarkable as their suffering. The MG42 gunner's story is a lesson in the realities of war. Firepower alone did not guarantee survival. The gunner's power made him a target. The MG42's brilliance depended on logistics, teamwork, and discipline. When supply lines broke, its effectiveness vanished. The gunner's experience underscores a timeless truth: an army is only as strong as its weakest link. Survival required bushcraft, adaptation, and mental resilience. The psychological toll was as great as the physical. The bond between gunner and assistant was often the only thing keeping them going. The MG42 gunner's legacy is a cautionary tale about the cost of power. He was both hunter and hunted, his fate dictated by the weapon he served. We must remember the human element behind every weapon. The MG42 gunner's story is not one of glory, but of survival against overwhelming odds. In war, the true measure of a soldier is not how much death he deals, but how long he can stave it off.